Thank you, friends, for joining us today for this webinar. We really appreciate you all being on time. And like Saloni mentioned earlier, we are an immigration advisory firm based out of Mumbai, and we specialize in investment-based and business immigration to North America and Europe. EB5 came very naturally to us, given my background as a chartered accountant and a banker, and as an investment advisor. We were able to adapt to all the nuances of the EB5. It's a complex program, but we were able to address all the issues like source of funds, investment, selection, remittance of funds, etc. And till date, we have successfully, helped many people from India to pursue EB5 and to move to US. Many of our clients are already in the US and living the American dream. So let's start with the presentation first. What is EB5? Some of you already know about it, but many of you have joined us new. So let's talk about EB5. What is EB5? Now, EB5 is a legitimate US government program, which is, gives you green card in return for an investment and job creation. So it's not purely investment, it has investment, and the investment should result into job creation for the Americans. Right, this program was started way back in 1990. It's not a new program. The program was started in 1990, and there was no change in the program till recently. Just last year, the US Congress passed a new act called the EB5 Reforms and Integrity Act of 2022. So the changes have been made in this program more than after 30 years, only recently, and we now have the new EB5 Act called the EB5 Reforms and Integrity Act of 2022. And there are some changes which have been brought about by the Act. Many of them are very beneficial to the investors, which we're going to talk more in detail. The program requires an investment of $800,000 in a US government approved project. And like I said, for each investor, there should be at least 10 jobs which should be created. So it's investment plus job creation. And with this, the entire family will get green card. So family will include husband, wife, and children below 21 years of age. And like I said, the program is pretty old. It got popular in India only since 2015 onwards. Prior to that, it was very popular in China. But in India, it had caught up, 2015 and 2017-18 was the time when it really took off in India, and thousands of Indian investors have applied under this program. Many of them have been applied to us, and they are already in the US enjoying the American dream. Now, why EB5? Why are we talking about EB5? Why is people are going for EB5? That is because this is one of the quickest and the easiest route to get green card, right? Friends, we know that, getting green card in the US is becoming increasingly difficult, especially of late in the past few years. The conventional, if you talk about traditionally earlier, the normal way of getting into US and getting a green card was through family sponsorship, where you have your friends, where you have your relatives, they will sponsor you, and after a few years, you get a green card and you move over there. Now, under the sponsorship route, if your uncle, auntie, or even, in some cases, even if your brothers or sisters want to sponsor you, then it is going to take you indefinite time. It could take 50 years, 100 years, or even more for you to move to US, which is virtually, impractical. The other traditional way of moving and a very popular way of moving into US, especially among Indians, was you go there for education, you study in the university over there. After graduating, you take up a job. After taking a job, you get H-1B visa, and then you migrate from H-1B visa to green card. That was a very popular route among Indians. But now we know it has become very, very difficult. Firstly, to get sponsorship for an H-1B visa is extremely difficult. Second, even if you get sponsorship after that, you need to apply for the lottery. H-1B visa has now become a lottery. In the recent, 65,000 visas which were set aside under the H-1B visa program, and you had almost 800,000 people applying for it. So it is a big lottery, and even if you get selected in the lottery, you will only get H-1B, which means you can only work in the US. You don't get permanent residency. You will get permanent residency after 20, 30, 40, 50 years, or even 100. So it's become virtually impossible to get permanent residency in the US through the traditional route. That's the reason why people are now looking at EB5. So relatively, while EB5 visa does take about 2 to 3 years or even more to get the EB5, to get the green card, but it is still much faster than the other traditional routes. The other advantage about the EB5 visa is that you don't need any age, education, or qualification, work qualification, etc. Unlike immigration programs of many other countries, we talk about Australia, UK, Canada, you have a point system over there, and you have to meet a lot of conditions, and only if you meet that, you can become eligible for residency. Here, the only condition is that you need to have money and you need to invest that money, right? And the money should result into job creation. We'll talk more about that later. Again, unlike H-1B, in case of EB-5, there is no lottery system. If you follow the process, if you do the things right, if your documentation is correct, if your investment process is correct, and you follow our advice and the attorney's advice, then you are almost assured of getting a green card through this process. Now, what are the benefits of green card? I'm sure most of you would know about it, but let's reiterate any which way. The first benefit is, of course, you can permanently stay in US as long as you want with the green card. The other benefit is you can undertake business over there, you can engage in profession, and third, you can work freely over there. You can work for any employer, no need of sponsorship, no need of H-1B visa. You are free to undertake any employment. Third, and a very, very important reason is you get easy admission to universities in the US. If you're looking at getting admission in a top university in US as a foreign student, there is a lot of competition. I've been going through this process for my son. Last year, he's planning to go to North America next year. And we have been through the process. We know how competitive it is, how difficult it is to get into the right university, because there is a limited number of seats available for international students. But if you have a green card, you'll be considered as a local student, and you have better chance of getting admission into top universities in the US. Not only that, if you are a resident, if you are a permanent resident in the US, you can also get tax benefits. You can save almost 1/3 of the fees. Now, this again depends upon university to university and state in which you are residing in the US. The other benefit is that you will get US citizenship and a very powerful American passport for 5 years after your permanent residency conditions are met. These are some of the key benefits of getting a green card. Now, for whom? Who are the people right now? Currently we have been engaging with a lot of people. We have been getting inquiries, hundreds of inquiries from all over India and also from US. So essentially at this point of time, like we said in the poll also, more than 50% of the people who are looking for EB-5 are the ones who are looking for their children who are already in the US, because this, they are not getting H-1B visas. The children who are studying overseas are not getting their H-1B visas. They are not able to get sponsorship. And that's the reason we have seen there have been many cases, even of people who we know very closely, where the children are having to return back from the US after completing their studies. So these are the parents now of students who are already studying in the US. They want to secure the children's future. That's why they are going for the green card. And there are some additional benefits now available to the students as well as H-1B visa holders, which we'll be talking more in detail. Also, it is for parents who want to send their children for US for education. Many of them have now realized that if we send our children for education to US, they may not be able to continue to stay there. It's difficult to get visas post completing their education. So they're planning to get them the PR even before they send them to education over there, so that by the time they complete their education, they have permanent residency and they can continue living over there. And it is also for employees who are working in the US on H-1B visa. We are seeing a lot of layoffs taking place in the US, especially among the tech companies, and a lot of Indians are employed in the tech industry in the US. We keep getting inquiries. In fact, just yesterday, we signed up a client from the US who was on H-1B visa and who wants to continue to live on the US, and that's why he's looking at EB-5 visa. We have a new set of clients. These are people, these are businessmen, these are professionals who want to move to US and capitalize on the business and the career opportunities over there. We also have people who are looking to be there with their friends and family members, like we mentioned earlier. Getting green card through sponsorship is taking very long time. So we have people who have friends and family members over there, and they would like to take EB-5 and move there and enjoy a good quality life along with their friends and family. So these are the kind of people who are looking at EB-5 at the current point of time. Now let us look at what are the steps involved in the EB-5 visa. Right? The first step is we need to evaluate your eligibility and determine your source of fund. Now, source of fund is an important component for determining your eligibility. We'll talk more in detail in the subsequent slides, but it starts with this process. In short, source of funds means we need to understand from where are you going to get the money from. You need to have legitimate money, source of funds for the purpose of investment. This process will take anywhere from about 2 months to 3 months, or depending upon what kind of documentation is already available with you. The next step is parallelly along with the source of fund, we also start looking at identifying projects for the purpose of making investment. You have to make a lot of due diligence to identify the right of the project. The project has to be approved by the US government. And we have to look at due diligence not only from immigration point of view, but also from financial point of view to ensure that you get your money back. There are certain steps that we follow. We have an in-house process. There are certain parameters that we have determined. Like I said, being an investment advisor and a banker, we have been doing this. I've been doing this in my earlier power as a banker. And this helps me in identifying and looking at projects for EB-5 purposes as well. So once you have identified the project, you have done your source of funds, you need to invest the money in the project and file your application. So after you have filed your application, it will take anywhere between 2 to 3 years for the US government to approve your application. Once your application is approved, then depending upon whether you are in India or US, you either go through if you are in India, you go to the Indian consulate and you appear for your, the EB-5 interview. It's a very simple interview. And then you get your visas and you move to US. If you are already in the US, then you have lots of advantages. You can start enjoying the benefits of green card almost immediately, even without having the actual green card. We'll talk about that more in detail later. And after 5 years from the date of your investment, typically you should get your money back. So these are in short the processes for EB-5. Now let's talk about the EB-5 in its new avatar. So friends, like I said, EB-5 has been an old program. It was started in 1990. And then the US government, the US Congress passed a new bill, a new act called the EB-5 Reforms and Integrity Act, the EB-5 RIA for short. This was passed in 2022. And this new act brought about a lot of changes in the EB-5 program and brought a lot of significant benefits to the investors. The first change was that the program has now been extended for 5 years till September 2027. So we now know that there is stability in the program. This program will remain, and we do not expect much changes in the program for the next 4 years. The other change is that the amount is now $1,000. So you need to invest $800,000 in a government-approved project. The third and the most significant benefit, especially for those who have children studying or working in the US, is concurrent filing of adjustment of status. We'll be covering this in detail. The other change that has been brought about is reservation of visas. This will give you a fast track path to move to US if you invest in certain type of projects. We'll again talk about this in detail in the subsequent slides. They've also brought in measures to ensure that the regional centers, many of you had questions or concerns regarding the safety of the investment. Well, that has now been taken care of in the new regulations, where there is a greater compliance on the regional centers with the view to protect the interest of the investors. And also they have brought in certain restrictions on direct projects. So these are some of the major changes, but we are going to focus more on concurrent filing and reservation of visas. So let's first understand what is concurrent filing for adjustment of status. So friends, like I mentioned earlier, in case of EB-5, after you have filed your petition, you need to wait about 2 to 3 years for your application to be approved. And then if you are already in the US on an F1 visa as a student, or an H1B visa as an employee, or on any other kind of non-immigrant visa, then you don't have to come to India, go to the council interview, and then move to US. You can continue to be in the US and you could have changed your status from non-immigrant to immigrant. But that would happen earlier only after your EB-5 application has been approved, which could take 2 to 3 years from the date of filing. But now, under the new act, they have allowed concurrent filing for adjustment of status for investors who are already in the US. What this means is that you don't have to wait for your EB-5 application to be approved for change of status. You can immediately apply for change of status after you have filed your EB-5 application. What does this mean? That if your child is in the US on F1 visa and H1B visa today, studying over there or working over there, and you file for your EB-5 application, immediately after filing for EB-5 application, you can apply for change of status. And you can start enjoying the benefits of green card much earlier. You will get the work permit, which is the biggest benefit, and you will also get your travel card. Now let us look at those benefits. Right? What are the benefits to the students? Now, once you have filed for concurrent, for adjustment of status after filing your EB-5 application, you get a travel card and you get your employment card. Well, you get your employment card, which means that you can continue to stay in the US. You even if your F1 visa expires, right? So you don't have to worry about what will happen to your child after he has completed his education. What if he doesn't get a job? What if he doesn't get any extension of the visa? Will he have to come back? We have had this situation. We have had a client, whose child was studying in one of the top universities in the US. They had made an application for EB5 in the year 2019. And they were waiting for the application to be approved. And in the meantime, they could not get the visa extension. The child could not get the visa extension to continue to be in the US after his education was over, and he was graduating, and he was, having to come back. After graduating, he was required to come back. But precisely at the same time, this new change in the March 22, this new change came in, and he was scheduled to come back in July. We could file for adjustment of status. We filed for adjustment of status. We got him the, employment authorization of the work permit, and he was able to take up his dream job. And today he continues to stay in the US, and he's working in his dream job as an investment banker in the US. So this will allow you, because thanks to concurrent filing, you could do that. So that will allow you, you don't have to worry about what happens to your children in case he's not able to continue to stay in the US. You can still be there. And you also get your travel card, which means that you can travel freely, even on an F1 visa or a student's visa or a H1B visa. You can travel freely in and out of US. You don't need to stamp your visa every time. What are the benefits to employees who are already working on H1B visas? Now, biggest market for EB5 today happens to be US. It's the H1B visa holders who are already in the US. They are, filing for EB5 because they know that through H1B, getting the EB5 is getting green card is going to take very long, and they're not sure what happens if they lose the job. Then they have faced the consequences of returning to the home country. And those who are already, working over there, they don't want to come back. So EB5 visa is the route, is the answer for them. You don't need to depend on any employer. Once you have an EB5 visa, you have a work permit, you can work freely for any employer. You don't need to depend on any employer. You can choose not to work and continue to live in the US if you decide to do so. You can start your own business or a profession. Again, I will give you an example. We had a client who had filed for EB5 visa earlier under the old act, and now, when the new adjustment, this facility of concurrent filing was available, we filed for the adjustment of status. We got them the employment card, and now, this girl is setting up her own, cultural academy in the US. And husband was working on H1B visa with the company. They are setting up their own startup company in the US. Right. So this is the benefit. You free yourself of dependence of any employer, and you get complete freedom to stay in the US and do whatever business, profession, or career that you want. Another big change which has been brought about by the new, Act of 2022 is they've introduced a new category of set-aside visas. Now, if under the EB5 visa, there is a certain quota available, limited number of visas available every year. So there are 700 visas set aside for each country. So people who are born in India, they will get only 700 visas per year. And we are seeing that the number of people who are applying for EB5 visa from India, countries like India, China, Vietnam, is increasing by the day. So what happens is that the demand is more than supply. Obviously, there is a backlog. You have to stand in the queue. And because of the queue, that was getting delayed. In fact, the queue was so long for people from China, they had to wait for 10 years or more to get their EB5 visa. And even more and more Indians, like I said, started applying from 2017 and 18. And now even Indians have to wait in the queue in order to get EB5 visa. And this is going to take longer. But under the new act, they've introduced special categories of visas called the set-aside visas. That means out of the 700 visas, about 32% of the visas will be set aside for specific type of project. So if you apply in this project, you can jump the queue and fast track your process into the US. This is how it will look like. So these are the kind of projects. You have projects which are coming up in the rural area. The US Government also wants to promote economic development in the rural areas. So 20% of the total visas out of the 700 will be set aside for projects which are coming up in rural areas. About 2% will be set aside for infrastructure projects, and 10% of the visas are being set aside for projects in the higher employment area. And as a result of this, you can see now that more and more people are preferring to invest in rural projects. Now, you need to keep in mind that right now we have this visas available, about 32% of 700. That means about 200 and a little over 200 kind of visas are available. These visas were available last year also. Last year's 200 visas got carried forward to this year, and this year also we have not seen the quota getting exhausted. Some part of it will get carried over to next year. But more and more people are now going, especially for rural projects. And we are seeing that trend that maybe in the next year or maybe in the next 1 or 2 years, this quota will also get exhausted. And if it gets exhausted, you will be joining the queue and the wait period will become longer. So for those of you who want to move to US quickly, this is the right time. You have the right opportunity. You have the set aside visas that are currently available. You should go ahead and grab them. This is how they will help you, like I explained, just get into the rural projects or high employment area projects. There are not too many infrastructure projects available any which way, but there are a lot of good rural projects. So those of you who want to know about, the rural projects or the infrastructure projects, you can set up a meeting with us. We can discuss more in detail. The link to the meeting is there in the chat. Can you please put the link for the meeting? You can go over there. You can schedule a call with us and we can have a separate discussion. It is not possible in today's webinar to talk about specific investment opportunities. But those of you who are interested in knowing more about this reserve visas and the projects for investment will be more than happy to schedule a one-to-one meeting with you. So let us look at now, what are the key factors? We have looked at what are the changes. Now let us look at some of the key factors which will determine the success of your EB-5 application. The first factor is the source of fund. Friends, we saw earlier that the starting point of an EB-5 application is the source of fund. Now, what is source of fund? Now, source of fund means, the US government wants to know that whether you are using legitimate money to finance your investment. And you have to show how you got the money. And not only that, you need to provide documentary evidence in support thereof. To understand source of funds more in detail, we have made a video on this subject. I will request you to go and have a look at that video. We have the link to the video in the chat. Typically, what happens is we have to look at the source of fund from the US point of view as well as Indian point of view. We have to keep in mind the Indian Act as well as the US Act. So most of the people feel that if you have a white money, if you have paid tax, source of fund is easy. It's not as simple as that. Believe me, you have to go into detail, you have to go into the entire trail, and you have to establish the link and give all the documentary evidence. And this process could take 1 month, 2 months. In some cases, we have taken even 6 months to ascertain the source of funds. It depends upon if you have multiple sources of funds, then it is going to take even longer. If you have more people who are financing, let's say if you are getting gifts from family members, then we'll have to go into the source of fund of each of these family members. So this is the first and the most important activity that you need to do. And your success of your initial EB-5 application, your I-526E application will be approved based on how well your source of fund is documented. If you have to prove that your source of fund is legitimate, and you need to present it in a manner that the US officials are able to understand it and approve your application. So source of funds, also another important component of source of fund is part of funds, which shows how the money is moving from one source to another till the time it is invested in the project. So this factor will get you into the US. But the other factor which will ensure that you continue to stay in the US, which will lead to a permanent green card, is job creation. Like we mentioned earlier, EB-5 is not simply an investment program. It is an investment plus job creation program. So you need to create minimum of 10 jobs for Americans. It's not easy creating and maintaining these 10 jobs. You have to pay salary to these employees irrespective of whether the business is profitable or not profitable. This is where the regional center projects have a big advantage. The regional centers which do not have to create actual jobs. They just have to give, they have been given this leeway Now, what is a regional center? A regional center is basically a government-approved entity which is formed in a particular region to promote economic activity and job creation in that region. The job of a regional center is to mobilize money from EB5 investors who want to move to US but are not in a position to create the jobs themselves. So they pool the money together and they invest in projects, large projects. Those projects will be using the equity funds, they will be using loans from the banks, etc. And all this money will be deployed into the project, which will result into large number of job creations. Not only that, the regional centers do not actually have to create jobs. They have to create notional jobs by applying an economic model. They just need to prove that money has been spent on the project, and by applying an economic formula, they create notional jobs, which are in very large numbers. If you are investing in a regional center project, the jobs are more or less deemed to be created. You don't have to worry about job creation. As long as the money is spent in the project, the jobs are created. And that's the reason why we have seen that most of the investors, more than 90% of the investors, invest in regional center projects. Now, to know more about the job creation, again, we have created a video on this subject because this is a critical component. So you can go to our YouTube channel. The link to the video is available in the chat. Now, let's talk about us, why clients choose us, how we can help you with the entire EB5 process. Like I said, we are a team of qualified professionals with experience in the areas of investment, banking, finance, taxation, immigration, etc. And we have a very good understanding of the concept of source of funds from India point of view as well as US point of view. Hence, we can offer you this expertise. We can guide you better. Of course, the US attorney is going to be involved in the source of funds, but we act as a bridge. We try to see what are the requirements in the US, explain it to you, help you in preparing the entire statement, and also present it to the US legal, service providers for them to process the application. We also have an expertise in understanding EB5 projects are quite complex. There are multiple entities involved. You have to look at a lot of factors, and you need to evaluate it like a project for financing. Like I said, being a banker, I do have an expertise in evaluating projects for financing for the purpose of investment, and we use our expertise in identifying the projects. We have some criteria which are laid down. We work with some of the top regional centers in the US, and we only work with regional centers with established track records and proven credentials. We have hands-on experience. Like I said, we have had many clients from India have done EB5. We have not only helped with the initial EB5 application, we have also helped them with concurrent filing, with getting, work permit and EAD. And we have very well-established relationships with the authorities, with the agencies and the service providers in the US, the regional centers, lawyers. Like I said, we work with the top regional centers and with the top lawyers, law firms in the US. How can we help you? What is our services? We provide a comprehensive services right from initial stage of planning and putting together the source of documentation till the final stage. After the documentation has been put together, we'll help you in identifying, reviewing due diligence of a project. If you have identified a project on your own, we can help you with the due diligence, or we can help you in selecting. We work with you jointly. We'll present you with various investment options, and based on the merits of each case, we'll jointly arrive at a decision on where to invest. We'll also advise you on remittance of funds. Now, this is one of the most important component. I know there are many people from India who get stuck up, who are not able to do EB5 because they don't know how to remit the funds which are required for the purpose of EB5. There are certain constraints, there are certain limitations. As we know, under the LRS scheme, there are only, you can remit about 250,000 US dollars every year. So how are you going to send $800,000 for the purpose of EB5? Well, that requires some kind of planning. And I'm glad many of you are looking at 2024, so we can start planning right now itself to have the funds ready for the purpose of investment in the next year. For those of you who would like to know more about the LRS scheme, about how you can send the money overseas, again, we have a video on that subject. You can go to our YouTube channel and browse for the LRS video and understand the concept and how it works, right? We can also we'll coordinate with the attorney, we'll ensure that the filing is done. And not only that, we'll also follow up for the adjustment of status. We'll keep updating you on the status of your application, as well as how your investment is progressing. We are providing all the services to our existing investors. And we will be there with you right till the time you get your green card and till the time you get your money back. So all the services over the period of next 5 to 7 years, we will be engaged with you, and we are going to be right here in India, helping you with the entire process. Why you should act now? I can see that some of you are planning in 2024, but there are reasons for you to hurry up. You need to act now because, if you act now, if you go enroll for EB-5 earlier, your children can start enjoying the benefits. They can move to US earlier, and they can get a job over there. Now, another big benefit of getting, I missed out in the earlier part of getting this green card, or doing concurrent filing for children who are already in the US. So as you know, if your children are studying in the US, they will have to start applying for the job if they are graduating next year. And whenever they are applying for a job or an internship, they are essentially, every employer in that online application form, they will definitely ask two questions. One is, what is your current status in the US? Whether you are on what type of visa, whether you are on immigrant students visa or you are on permanent visa. And second question they will ask you is whether you require sponsorship, for taking up the job. And the moment you say that, yes, because if you are on a non-immigrant visa, you cannot be there till you get sponsorship. And the moment you say that you need sponsorship, more than 60-70% of the employers will set aside your application because they are not ready to provide sponsorship. It's only some of the large leading tech companies or very few companies who are ready to sponsor employees, right? So if you have a green card now, even if you are applying for adjustment of status and you get your work permit under the adjustment of status, you don't need to click that you will need sponsorship. You don't need sponsorship. So you did not click that part in the application form. And then you will have wider number of employees offering you employment opportunity. So this is another big reason why you should act now, especially if your children are going to qualify and looking for a job in the US in the next few years, right? Those who are already working in the US, they can switch job. We all know what is happening with H-1B visa, with retrenchment. If you lose your job, you have only about 6 months to find another job, or else you may face the consequences of having to come back to India again. Now, to avoid that, the best option will be EB-5 visa. If, like I mentioned, the fast track visa, there are a limited number of visas available in the fast track category. These visas are getting exhausted, and with more and more people applying, we anticipate in the next 1 or 2 years, again, these visas will get completely exhausted, and then you will have to join the normal queue, which will take quite a long time for you to get EB-5 visa. So this is, another important reason why you need to act now. And third, and the most important reason, you all know that, those of you who are watching this scenario on remittance of funds, that tax on remittance, the TCS on remittance is going to increase from 1st July. Currently, it is 5%. And from 1st July, it is going to become 20%. So if you want to remit money outside India for the purpose of EB-5, this is the time you need to act. I'm sure because the EB-5 process takes very long and you are not able to file for EB-5, but at least you can plan to remit the money before 30th of June and park it while, and then subsequently worked on the source of funds. So this is a golden opportunity for all of you, those who are looking at remittance of funds, those who are looking at planning for EB-5, maybe even in 2024, you need to start working on the remittance of funds, and the sooner you do, the better. Ideally before 30th of June, so that you can save on TCS. Now, friends, with that, we come to the end of our webinar.